And look at it as just one thing, as a term that everybody knows. ROI, which is the return on your investment. I mean, that's the business we're in. We make it an investment of what every month? Of leads. We write that check, and through lead aggregation, or whether you have in-house canvassing teams, whatever it may be, shows we're spending that money, every company. And that's the investment we make. And what are we hoping for? We want to get a return on that investment.
This is the Wealthy Contractor Podcast, brought to you by G4 Marketing. Interviews with today's top home improvement entrepreneurs about marketing, sales, money, mindset, and lifestyle. Now, here's your host, Brian Kaskavalciyan.
All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Wealthy Contractor Podcast. This is Brian Kaskavalciyan with G4 Marketing Group, and I'm here with my friend Mark Curry, who, for those of you that can see him, he is sitting in his castle room, hidden away in Churchill's Hideaway, his new office. Those of you that saw the Red Door video will kind of have a sense of what I'm talking about. But Mark, thanks for being here. Welcome.
Thank you.
For those of you that can't see, so he's got behind him is like a stone wall. He looks like, where do you look like you are? You're like in 17th century England, right? Yeah. Or 16th century England. He's got an armed guard in full armor protecting him. There are two lanterns on either side, candle powered, fire lanterns behind him. And he's got a cigar and he's got a room full of wine behind him. So he's a happy guy, I think, right now. Would you say, is that an accurate assessment of Mark Curry at this moment?
Well, yes, I'm happy. I'm still a work in progress, and I'm certainly not without my challenges and problems like everybody else, but
yeah,
I'm working at it.
Yeah. So Mark is my partner in crime for this thing we do called the Profit Workshop. We've done it twice. I was just telling Mark, and I think it's an interesting place to start. I was just telling Mark about a meeting I had with one of the attendees last week, I believe it was, and we were planning for 2023. And, they grew a lot during the I'll set this up as they grew a lot during the COVID boom, a lot. And unfortunately, he took on debt. And anything that might be going to the bottom line is actually going out in debt payments. But hopefully that will be over in 6 months or so, and he could start actually like putting the money in his pocket. But what I found interesting, Mark, as we were going through his numbers, his most recent Q4 numbers, and then planning for next year, is his sales numbers are down. What's saving him is his backlog. And I think his sales numbers are somewhere it is the time of year too. It's, the holidays, it's the end of the year. So it's traditionally not the best time of year for selling, but they're down quite a bit. I think he's at 500 or 600 a month in sales, but $1 million in installs. And so the installs are backlog that's essentially saving him right now. But what happens when that the not enough sales now catches up? How is that going to impact the business? And I think that might not be the only one that's in that situation. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to the core issue of people really understanding that the business that we're in, as it relates to our type of business model in our industry of direct in-home selling, where there's a lag. whether it's 2 months, 3 months from point of sale to time of actually realizing the revenue and the cash coming in, right? It's unlike the retail business where there's a direct correlation to foot traffic and activity and your income, right? Retail stores like a Sam's Club, a Home Depot, a Lowe's, they know seasonally throughout every week, every month throughout the year what their foot traffic is. And there's a direct correlation between that activity, that foot traffic, and the amount of sales we're going to have for the day, for the week, for the month. With us, that there is a correlation, but there's that time lag. What we do today, we don't see the results of until say 2 months later, right? So when do we purchase sales? Our sales acquisition happens today, this month. And we spend money on leads. We send salespeople out to homes. We pay commission. We incur material costs the following month. So you have all that expense, and you don't see the what it yields in terms of the benefit, that the revenue, until a period of time thereafter. So you have that time delay. To simplify it, look at it this way, and I've said this before in our profit workshops that we conduct together, Brian, and that is the most profitable time that any business has in our industry is when it's essentially going out of business, or meaning when it's declining in terms of sales, because the leads aren't coming in this month, right? Let's say, as an example. So you're not spending as much money on marketing. Your net sales are lower this month, so you have less commissions being paid out. But when you look at your revenue being installed this month, it's a result of a stellar month of sales from net sales from 2 months ago. So you're realizing all that revenue top line with lower expenses. And you could still right here today, for the next few months, look very profitable and think, well, despite the fact that things are slowing down, I'm still making some good money. But that's not the whole story. The reality of it is 3 months later, we're coming into maybe perhaps the first quarter of next year, you're going to see these low install revenue, your backlog, you're chewing through your backlog. And so that'll catch up to you. Conversely, on the other side, the flip side of that coin is the least profitable time for a business of ours is when you're in a growth mode, because you're purchasing those sales now, you're spending all that money on leads and commissions and hiring personnel and turnover, what have you. And you're not seeing the revenue, come in until, again, 2 to 3 months later. Make sense?
Makes sense. So so it's difficult to manage that. It's a constant of, I've got good sales months, I've got bad sales months, I've got high marketing costs and high commission costs this month. I've got to put out money for materials. It's a constant balancing act. How do you manage to that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think it's as complicated as you might think. I mean, it all starts with having a good, sound profit and loss model, right? How your company is built out. What is your multiplier on your materials called the COGS? That's going to determine your gross margins, your cost per issued lead, setting up your chart accounts the right way and what have you. So you have your business model, what commissions, percentage you're spending. And what you're determining then beyond all that is your overhead. How big is your ship and in terms of overhead. And once you have that model built out, frozen in time, if you will, you say, all right, if I do X number of dollars, my business model doing X, let's just say it's, $10 million a year. Then, and you got a, $2 million overhead, 20% overheads. That's your starting point right there. That's your business model. Then there's going to be fluctuations as you go throughout the year. Good months, beyond what your plan is, and then other in terms of sales, net sales, and then some months that maybe not as good. So you have this variable, this fluctuation beyond your business plan. When I say your model, that's your one integrated plan. Whether, perhaps, a lot of the listeners are using EOS. So you built out your 1 year, your 3 year, your 10-year plan. So you have your plan, you break it down in quarters, little mini years, we call them 13 weeks. And you'll have those fluctuations of in sales. You also then have the fluctuations of your installs. So the nature of your question is, here you have this variable of sales above and below your plan in any given month, and likewise with your installs. So what we typically do, and what we talk about in our profit workshops that we do, is each month you can right the ship in a sense. I say that meaning make a course correction or take a look at where you're really at so you don't panic. And you take your P&L, export it from, say, whatever CRM you're using or software, say it's QuickBooks. You have it in a spreadsheet, and you got all your expenses for that month that are real, okay, that are tied. Most of those expenses are going to be tied, like your marketing costs, to the sales that you purchased that month. Then what you do is just, at the risk of complicating this, is delete the top line, delete your revenue, your installed revenue. Just erase it out of that cell. And then what you put into that cell is your net sales for the month. Now you need to do just one other thing. The COGS on your P&L, your material and labor costs, was all tied to that revenue that you deleted, remember. So just delete your COGS and put in whatever it should be based on your model, right? If you have a 2.5 multiplier on your materials and labor, that's 40%. So you just put 40% in to that spreadsheet, and then you have a corrected P&L in real time. So hopefully that makes sense. You're saying, hey,
that answers, by the way, remember I told you before we turned on the recording, I had a question for you, and that was it. You just answered it. So it's a reconciling based on actual sales, not on the actual revenue that was installed. Now, a lot of people don't do that. So let's talk about this. So I want to get your take on this. So next year, it's already started, I think. Now, as we record this, we're in the middle of December. It's already started. Lead costs are going up. And that generally happens in markets like this where there aren't as many leads out there. There'll be less, and there's more people fighting for those leads, so the lead costs will go up. How do you recommend people that now, this will go out early enough in the year where they could start to think about, well, how do I deal with that? How do I deal with the fact that leads are going to go, costs are going to go up, and they're going to get more competitive?
Yeah, so great question. My thoughts on this is that in the past, we'll call it post-COVID, since 2020, right? Everybody's been talking about how a rising tide lifts all ships. So we've all benefited from it. Companies that run what I call very tight, very systematic, where they engineer their success. It all happens by design. But then there's other companies that have been successful almost through accident through default, because it's just hard not to make money over the past few years. It's hard not to grow your business the way things have been. It's just the environment in our industry. Now, what that means is everybody's been on what I call corn-fed veal. The salespeople have high NSLIs. They became, maybe they lost their, I'm not saying that everybody converted into being an order taker, but the scales may have leaned that way somewhat, right? They lost their fighting edge. But it's not just with the sales force. It's also with the lead center, your scheduling department or your call center. Same thing there. Are they really closers? We me and some of my team members, we've been at this gig for a really long time. And we recently had our director of marketing do a random sampling. It was a couple months ago of about 20 calls. He listened to them on the recording in our call center and thought, holy heck, we only wish the leads were this easy to come by, 20 some years ago. I mean, it just, they're just coming in softballs across center plate and we're knocking them out of the field, out of the arena every time. So even our callers have been order takers. So when things tighten up, where the environment changes a little bit and the leads are not as plentiful, or maybe the question is it the lead flow really slowing down as much as our conversions in the call center have just weakened because we have more of an order taking mentality there? So that's where we have to remind ourselves we're in the value-added selling business. What do we do? We're not order takers. So the call center needs to sharpen their sword. All right. And by having higher conversions, what's that going to do? That's going to lower your cost per issued lead. By the same token, we have to sharpen the sword of our salespeople. It's not as easy as to close that deal. Interest rates are higher. The lenders that we all use are being a little more restrictive. We can't just go out there and offer 24 months, same as cash type of thing. All those programs are tightening up. So it comes back to the salesperson, not having that path of least resistance anymore. And so we got to put them back in the Top Gun school on the sales side as well as on the call center side. So if we drive that NSLI up and maintain it, what it has been over the past few years, and keep that cost per issued lead down where it has been, then you divide one by the other, which is the definition of marketing costs. Your cost of the lead, fully loaded, divided by your NSLI, just on one lead. And that's going to be the marketing percentage on your P&L. So I think it's time now, that's why I refer to this era that we're in. We're on the cusp of the great purge. The companies that understand that and going to, through training, remedial training, sharpening the swords of our sales force as well as our call center, are going to be the ones that are not just going to survive the winter that is coming, but they're going to actually prosper, I believe, not just maintain, but really continue to grow as other people fall to the wayside. Anyway, that's my philosophy.
Yeah, let's you brought up NSLI. Some people aren't as familiar with what NSLI is and what its importance is. Can you talk a little bit about NSLI?
Yeah, so there's a number of companies who'll call it like a slugging percentage or NSLI, whatever acronym you want to put to it. NSLI, by the way, stands for net sale per lead issue. But I'm a big advocate of just trying to keep things simple and dumbing it down in terms of the concept, right? And look at it as just one thing, as a term that everybody knows. ROI, which is the return on your investment. I mean, that's the business we're in. We make an investment of what every month? Of leads. We write that check, and through lead aggregation, or whether you have in-house canvassing teams, whatever it may be, shows we're spending that money, every company. And that's the investment we make. And what are we hoping for? We want to get a return on that investment. So we got to measure both things. What does it cost us to put a lead out on the street? How efficient do we do that job? And then, what is the parameter, the KPI, the key performance indicator that we use to measure that return on investment? And that is the net sale on that lead. So simple math is, if I issued 10 leads to a sales rep and they netted out, not gross sales, but netted out $30,000. You would take 30,000 and divide it by those 10 leads, and you would come up with $3,000 per lead, right? If the lead cost me to issue $300, just keeping the math simple, and my return on the investment was 3,000, well, then my marketing cost was 10% in that example.
Okay. And so, and so it's shocking that so there's a few things there. In order to be successful going forward, we have to go back to where we were 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And that is train, train, train. Call center, salespeople, every lead should be treated as gold. What the NSLI is telling you, NSLI is one of your scorecards. It's telling you how effective your salespeople are in the house. Am I correct in that?
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And then so when we measure marketing cost against that NSLI, we want to be in a position where whatever you've budgeted, whether it's 8%, 10%, 20%, 15, whatever it is, that those things match up. And I think what happens a lot is, Charlie Gindell at Accelerate this in February, the one coming up, is going to be talking about these topics. And I think he's not going to be the only one. I think we're going to have 2 or 3 speakers that are going to overlap on the same idea of we've got to get more efficient with every lead that comes in. And we can't allow salespeople to just go and do whatever they want to do. There's a lack of sales management out there. It's a time to get serious again about the numbers and the tracking KPIs. How do you guys do it at Revelare? How do you keep your people accountable? And keep in mind too, I mean, you're a larger, very sophisticated organization. How did you do it, when you were 3 years in and you were a much smaller company?
Well, the template's the same. The
Yeah.
formula is the same, right? The numbers are the numbers, regardless of the size of your business. And what I mean by that, again, at the risk of oversimplifying things, but I think there's some really value top level with starting with simplicity, right? So what business are we in? And I look at it as though we have 3 machines. And one of those machines is called the marketing machine. The raw leads that we purchased, the conversion in our call center. But it's a machine, and it has a certain amount of horsepower. Some companies have a better horsepower rating on that machine than others, right? So you got to measure the efficiency of that marketing machine that generates leads. The second machine is the sales machine. How efficient is that? One of the key performance indicators that we've already talked about there, and that's a simple machine to measure because it's just tied to that return on the investment, that NSLI or slugging percentage or what have you. And again, people talk about closing percentage, retention, average sale, but when you put all that in blender, it's comes out to be what we call at Revelare Kitchens, the NSLI. And that's a term that, of course, a lot of our industry is familiar with. The third machine is what I call contract fulfillment, right? We can't just market the hell out of things and make a lot of sales and then, give ourselves a ticker tape parade. We need to install this stuff. And that machine has to be efficient. We measure the reviews, how many reviews we're asking for, how many we get in return, 5-star Google reviews. What is your cycle time from contract being sold to all the way through to collecting the money and having a happy customer, right? It goes through maybe a measure technician, if you have those, your administration, fighting to get those deals purchased. I say purchased, getting the loan approved, procuring funding for the deal, placing the order with the suppliers, the efficiency, having jobs come in that have been shorted of materials, what have you, all your vendor selection, your installers, your best practices. So that third machine, which doesn't get talked about much, right? Because typically we're always talking about the first two machines of marketing and sales. But that third machine, what's interesting is it also has to operate very efficiently, because if we take the eyes off of that, that becomes a real distraction. You get, whether it's an AG complaint, a consumer complaint of some sort, the owners or the top level management get pulled into those things, and it's a real time vampire. And once the focus is taken away from driving marketing, sales, and you're shifting personnel over to focus on the mishaps of contract fulfillment, installation related issues. This is where, we tend to lose our way. We're jumping around like spit in a frying pan from this to that to another thing, right? It's the crisis of the day. And so I think top level, it starts with looking at those three separate categories or silos I just laid out. Now, how we measure that is through our weekly, we call them BPR, business plan reviews. We do every Thursday morning at 8 o'clock. It's the only real meeting that I, as a business owner, attend in my business each week. And it's, if you prescribe to EOS, it's what's referred to as the level 10 meeting. They're structured very similar, but we have, for those 13 weeks each quarter, we know what our goals are, our plan. We call it the integrated plan. And the executive team is there. The person running each one of those three machines. And then there's some sub-level management also that participates in those meetings. But everybody has their scorecard, right? One of our guiding principles is if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So we got to start by having those metrics in place. What is it that we're measuring as it relates to our plan? And they speak. They have 5 minutes to do a slide presentation, get before their peers, and let them know where they stand this week in relation to the plan. And they're either green, meaning they're exceeding plan, or their bar graph shows red. And it's okay. It's a safe space. They can show red as long as they have an explanation as to why it's red and what their plan is to remedy that situation within the next week.
Yeah. Yeah. And the key thing there, and I knew you were going to say this, and part of the reason why I asked is because that process hasn't changed regardless of when you were doing $1 million a year, $1 million a month, or now $1 million a week. It's the same, it's the same structure.
It is. It really is. Yeah, those fundamentals are always in place. And, it's, you can be $100 million size company and still be loose as a goose, and it could be a complete train wreck.
Yeah.
Or it could be very tight and systematic. And whether you're $100 million, that statement I just made still can apply to a company only doing $5 million.
Right. Yeah.
Let's pause here for a quick break. Are you ready to accelerate your business success in 2023? If you answered yes, then you'll want to listen closely to this special invitation, because we're calling all home improvement and home service business owners to join us at Accelerate Live 2023, happening in beautiful sunny Florida on February 7th and 8th. This is the only home improvement event guaranteed to be profitable for you on day one. To get more information, please go to www.accelerateevent.com. Discounted pricing is available right now. So if you want to save big, go to www.accelerateevent.com, and for additional savings, enter coupon code WEALTHY23 at checkout. Remember, this event is 100% guaranteed. If you don't feel it was profitable enough for you on day one, not only will we refund you your ticket money, but we will also give you $1,000 back to cover for your time and your travel. So don't delay. Go to www.accelerateevent.com and secure your ticket today. Now back to this week's episode.
Okay, so the three machines, I'm glad you you made that analogy. I'm actually at Accelerate. I'm actually going to do a presentation. One of my presentations is going to be around this idea of constraints. And so you've got, your machines or the systems within the business. And what's interesting is, and you and I see this a lot, is the machine, if you are the owner of the company and you're working inside of the machine, it's very difficult to do the things that need to be done to improve the machine because you're in it. So, we've got owners that are running leads. Well, look, if you have to run leads, you have to run leads, but pretty quickly, you've got to pull yourself out of that so that you can build this machine. And then you can manage the machine, and then you can improve the machine, and then break it and improve it, and break it and improve it. And it's constant levels of improvement. It's very difficult to do that from inside. And I think too many owners get themselves stuck in one of those machines, and they have a hard time getting themselves out of it. What would you say to that?
Yeah. Well, and this is something that you've seen a lot with your clients, and I have seen the same thing in conversations that I had, and some of the consulting work that I do with people. The question always is, the proverbial question is, when do I get a sales manager? Or, I'm thinking about hiring another administrator, or I'm scheduling the jobs myself, and I need to get a production manager to do that. But, what revenue do I need to be at to do, when do I do that? And that's always the question. And I would tell you the first 10 or 15 times, I probably fielded that question.
Yeah.
I think I gave bad advice, to people. It was, I ill-advised them, unintentionally, of course, but I got, reflecting on it and looking at my own experiences, right? The one business I had years ago was something I purchased where it was a turnaround. But the business I have here today was something, I started from scratch. And I went through that. There's a time when I started this business, that I was on the phone setting the leads, even ran a couple appointments and what have you. So, I had to reflect on my own experience. And the answer is really simple. And that is, it's a matter of putting your focus mentally on that. And you know me well enough, Brian, right? Just quantitatively, right? Wanting to measure everything. And this is not something, this is more in your world. This is not something that you're going to measure or look at numbers with. This is a mindset. And that mindset's got to be one of which, holy hell, I got to get out of the field selling. I'll never grow this thing if I'm in the field running leads. Or why am I dealing with this problem customer right now? Okay, I need somebody else to do this. So my mindset is always going to be towards, how do I backfill myself? And it's always been that. It's a progressive thing. It doesn't stop, right? Because the idea, it's easy to say, hey, I want a business that works for me. I don't want to be working for it. Does the business own you, or do you own that, right? We always have those conversations over the years. It's all very top level, but how does that really manifest itself in terms of reality? And it is strictly a mindset. There's no numbers can be applied. Shame on any person says, well, when you get to 2 million, then you had to do this. And when you got this many people, salespeople, then you want to get a sales manager. No, it's different for everybody. And you'll find your way through it on your own. Everybody does. It's just like perhaps the first time you had sex. Hate to take the conversation in that direction, but it's not like there was a rule book or a manual. You just kind of figure it out as you go. And the same thing with business. But the mindset's got to be one of which, how do I get out of this?
Yeah.
So as long as you're constantly thinking and deliberating on that, it'll just, through osmosis, it'll just happen naturally.
Yeah.
You'll get out of the field from being a selling guy to being a sales manager, then from a sales manager, hiring somebody to backfill that position. And then right on up to the point that you get to where I was, 5 years ago, I purposely said, all right, I don't want an office in my building.
Yeah.
As you're aware of it, I just, want to take myself out of the business altogether. Still have my fingers on the pulse of it. I mean, there's weekly BPR meetings every Thursday, but that's it.
That's
I'm
it.
watching it more than I'm participating in it.
Yeah. So let's wrap up with talking about profitability. Your and my favorite topic. So one of the things that, well, first off, you're going to be back at Accelerate again. I got to do a pitch, plug, whatever for Accelerate. Mark will be back again. Mark is, and I've said this before, but Mark is I think one of the only people that I have found in the home improvement industry that can actually explain and teach people what it is to be profitable in a home improvement business. Here's what it looks like. Here's how you set it up. Here's how you manage it. Here are the numbers. I mean, and that's why I asked him. I mean, it was like, wow, he came to Accelerate. I think it was the first time was 3 years ago. I had you do a presentation on this topic and I was just blown away. And I came to you later and I said, hey, why don't we take this and expand it and create a workshop out of it? And we did. We created the 2-day profit workshop, which has been amazing the last couple of years. The last year sold out in 6 weeks or something like that, like 2 months ahead of time. And I imagine the same thing will happen again next year, but you'll be at Accelerate to talk about the fundamentals of profitability. But we talk about 15 to 20%. This figure, and I think I've said it here before, but according to a survey that was done by Dave Yoho of thousands of home improvement companies, 41% of the companies surveyed had a pre-tax net profit of 3% or less. 3% or less. So to put that into context, so these companies that you see out there, not to disparage anybody, but these companies out there that are doing 20 million, 30 million that you guys are, like me, used to be impressed with, I'm not that impressed anymore because I know the reality of it. You're doing 20 million and putting 3 points to the bottom line. You're making less money than clients I have that are doing 4 and 5 million with 15 to 20% net profit. And so how important is a focus? Again, it's a focus and a mindset. How important is focus on profit, but also the engineering of profit?
Well, my immediate response is
supreme.
What possibly could be more important than that? I mean,
well, and again, Mark, sorry to interrupt you. I knew your answer because too many business owners, as you and I both know, too many business owners accept whatever profit the business will give them rather than starting with profitability in mind and engineering it.
That's interesting. Well, what you just laid out is the proverbial tail wagging the dog.
Exactly.
Right? So let me just jump into business, have a business because I want to be a business owner, and then we'll see what falls out. We'll see what chips fall where, and that would scare the bejesus out of me. I don't know that I'd get much sleep at night going into any kind of a business with that mindset. But I think people that do that, it can be quite sobering. Entrepreneurs sometimes get into business because they're risk takers, they're gamblers, right? A lot of people in our industry they're not graduated from Harvard or what have you. They got a high school education and they have a driving motivation in their heart, mind, and soul, and they are willing to roll the dice and gamble and believe in themselves. And these are good traits. I mean, this is at the very heart and core of every entrepreneur, but they miss that cerebral component sometimes, and that's after they're in the business for 3 or 4 years and you're getting your tail end handed to you and thinking, hey, this is a little harder than what I thought. that's where then, and we see it all the time, you do, I do with clients, that people become very resourceful and they want to learn. And that's what you, through G4 Marketing and through Accelerate, bring to the table. It's a great forum for that type of Harvard business education as it relates to our business. Only you don't have to dedicate 4 years and $120,000 a semester to go through it. But it's yeah, and there's an education, that needs to be had through accounting, through fundamental business math. And so yeah, that's what's very transformative in our industry right now.
Yeah. Well, and you and I have been talking about it for years and years and years. And I think now people are listening. I'm hearing more and more about being profit focused rather than being revenue focused. And so it's exciting to see because, my contention is this really is one of the toughest businesses to be in. There's so many moving parts, and the value that you bring to the marketplace is not one that you should discount. You are such a valuable part of the marketplace, replacing windows, improving homes, repairing, replacing roofs, redoing people's bathrooms, kitchens, plumbing, HVAC, all of it. It's such valuable, and it goes back to one of the first things that you said in this conversation is, what is the business we're in? We're in a value add business. We're in the business of creating value out in the marketplace and selling that value. And I think people discount themselves way too much. And hopefully you and I will help to make some dent in that and help change that by the things that, we get to do.
Well, looking forward to Accelerate in February.
Yeah. So, thank you, Mark, for being here. For those of you that are, Mark, we're in the middle of December. We've got about 30 spots left for Accelerate, which is pretty exciting. We're way ahead of where we were last year. We are in a bigger room, so we'll have more people. But it's going to be a great event. If you don't have a ticket yet, you can go to accelerateevent.com, accelerateevent.com. And if you use, I'm going to give you a coupon code here. If you use coupon code Wealthy23, you will save, I think it's $100 on your ticket. You will see Mark, and Mark will present again on here's how you make money in this business. And again, he does it in a way that is easy to understand. And it's a very, very popular presentation. And we will do it every year because more and more people need to hear your message and see your system. And make no mistake, I mean, Mark has a system for everything, including profitability. And so he'll share that system with you. So thank you, my friend. As always, I appreciate you being here and everything that you do for me and for the community. And to everybody listening, until next time, it's Brian Kaskavalcian with G4 Marketing Group, and this is the Wealthy Contractor Podcast.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Wealthy Contractor Podcast. Let me ask you, did it help you look at your business in a different way? Did it spark an idea or ideas that you hadn't thought of before? Do you have a list of action items that you can take and implement into your business or your life today? I really hope so. If it did, I'd like to ask you a favor. Would you leave a 5-star review of the podcast? By doing so, you'll help other contractors find the podcast more easily so that we can help them achieve more success, wealth, and freedom. And before you go, make sure you subscribe to the Wealthy Contractor Podcast so you get access to the latest episodes as soon as they're available. We're always striving to provide you with great content so you don't want to miss what's coming up. In fact, if you haven't already, make sure you go to thewealthycontractor.com and get your free copy of my latest book, The 7 Secrets to Becoming a Wealthy Contractor. Just pay shipping and handling, and I'll take care of the cost of the book. And finally, a big thanks to G4 Marketing for sponsoring the Wealthy Contractor Podcast. For over 12 years now, G4 Marketing has been the secret back office relationship marketing team for hundreds of home improvement and home service businesses just like yours. You get the customer, and our proven system turns that customer into 5-star reviews and profitable repeat and referral business. If your home improvement or home services company completes at least 10 jobs per month, they have a solution that will work for you. To find out more, sign up for your free, no obligation, 10-minute discovery call at www.g4marketing.com/strategy. That's GFOUR marketing.com/strategy. Set your discovery call up today, and they'll help you set your business up for long-term profits and success. So until next time, this is Brian Cascadalsi.